This weekend, Jason do a seminar for pond cleanouts. If you have a pond that we've built or that you have in your yard, it'd be a good thing to actually learn how to clean them the proper way.
We're really do-it-ourselfers here at the Leans, and we love to have Earthworks show us how to do things. So cleaning out our pond was definitely something that we thought we would pay for the first year, watch how they did it, and do it ourselves the next year and the next year. Well, after having Glenn come out for 2 days and getting covered in fish muck and bacteria and dead leaves, my husband and I both decided this might be something that we pay Earthworks to do every year.
Morning guys, hey, welcome to our first ever dual Facebook Live, YouTube Live, going all at the same time. So today we've got Glenn with us, and I'm going to introduce him to him here in a second. But today we are going to be doing our pond cleanout seminar. So typically, where we're standing here, you guys will have like 25, 30 people hanging out with us, learning, and half of those customers, half of those people are people that we built ponds for, that Glenn is currently servicing, and so on and so forth. So because of COVID, we are doing it live, and we're going to be able to repeat this over and over and over. So if you guys can't hang with us for the 2 hours, no worries. There is going to be a recap, but there's going to be so much information in the next 2 hours that we're going to go over. So let me give you guys a little bit of we're going to need to start working. Me and Glenn need to get to work. So I'm going to give you a quick little synopsis of what's going on, and then we're going to be interjecting the entire day. So to start with, we are going to go ahead, and this is mainly for you guys, the customer, the person, the hobbyist that's out there that has a pond they built themselves, or even if we've built the pond for you and you want us to do the manual labor, but now you're taking care of it yourself. That's the main purpose of what this is today, so we're going to try to gear it mostly around that. I believe the questions that we've come up with are going to be, I haven't heard the questions or seen the questions, but they'll probably be directed in that manner, what's best for you at home. Secondly, this video, you'll notice Glenn, he does this all year long. He's got the best dirty job in America, in my opinion, and I know Glenn will talk about that, but we're going to talk about why you would hire us if you didn't want to do it yourself for any reason, whether it's hire us for doing the maintenance on your pond all year long, or it's just going ahead and getting us doing the clean out once a year. So I think Gara, one of our people that's going to be on today, giving you guys some questions that I have to answer, one of our best testimonial clients, she is very interested in maintaining her own pond, but at the same time, she realized this year that she's going to hire you every year, Glenn. So we'll talk about that some more. And lastly, we're going to have one extra little element, and we don't want to confuse people. We're going to be talking about a couple things, some efficiencies from the contractor standpoint. So we actually have people, we're not just builders, we actually have people that come and buy from us here at the store. So we're going to address that as well, on how you can be maybe a little more efficient, how you can be, certain products that I would use to keep the fish safe while we're doing this, and so on and so forth. So we'll have a little contractor spin on it here and there. And that conversation is really for those guys out there, because what we're going to do for you guys and what you guys need to do at home is the same thing the contractor's going to do. We're just going to try to give them a little edge on how to be a little safer for the fish, and how to be maybe a little bit more efficient too, and what to do. So, all right, I say let's get kicked off and let's get started. So Glenn, we're going to go ahead and kick this off with, let's get the pump in there, right? Or do you want to say anything to start with?
Well, yes, as Jason mentioned, I'm the pond tech. I do all of the any problems with ponds. I'm the one that you're going to see. I am probably the oldest pond tech in the country. So I'm a month and a half short of 70, so and have the dirtiest job here at Earthworks. So it's lots of fun.
And he's also here every single Saturday at this retail location. He's here almost every single Saturday, here to answer your questions. So,
all right. So
yeah, we're gonna get kicked off. The first thing we're gonna do, guys, and you'll notice we have 2 tanks. I'll get into that in a second, why we have the 2 tanks set up. But Glenn, the first thing we're gonna do is get this thing shut down and start draining this thing out. As soon as we got draining out and doing something, I'm gonna let Glenn. He'll let me know every once in a while when he needs to say something when he's doing. But go ahead and get it kicked off, Glenn. You want me to unplug the pump?
Say anything about the pump that we're
Yeah, actually, so the pump that you guys see there, it's a pretty beat up old pump. It's actually not very old. That's probably only a 1 to 2 year old pump. We go through these things every 2 years or so. He has to buy new pumps. They get beaten up. They're sucking things up all the time. They're great for what they're used for. This is something that you might be able to find at a Home Depot type thing, but this is not something you would use in a pond ever, like for continuous use. It's great for using it for the couple hours we need it here, drain the ponds, and it sucks all kinds of stuff up, spits out the other end. But we'll get into why we use a certain type of pump in the actual pond itself to run continuous. But for you guys at home, that's the same pump you'll use to drain your pond. So homeowner, do-it-yourselfers, there's no reason to have to go buy a pump like that on a small pond like this. No reason to buy a pump like that at Home Depot for a few $100s when you've already got one of our pumps that's more expensive because it's good for long-term use. But you can actually take that, repurpose it in the pond. Just takes a little longer. It's a little less efficient. Yep. So we're gonna go ahead and shut down the pond. You guys see the pond's running now, and I'm gonna talk about that actually some more. So as Glenn gets this going, I'll keep interjecting, but you'll notice, and I don't know if you want to get a little closer here, John, but this pond is pretty disgusting. Well, actually, when we get to the bottom of it, it's not going to be that disgusting. We've just pretty much tried to avoid it for the last couple months as much as we can because we want it to look as ugly as possible for a good before and after, right? And also, we want it to look like maybe what it would look like at your home. Because when it gets to this point is when you're going, what do I do? This is driving me insane. Let's get this thing cleaned out. So we have lots of algae growing in here, and we intentionally left it that way. We had an event not too long ago with some CACs here, and we had, actually no, it was actually before that, it was construction during January, where we had porta potties out here, and when they got picked up, there was a porta potty accident and it leaked, which created excess amount of chemicals that killed a couple of our fish, very sadly, and also has created this like imbalance in the ecosystem. But it was actually kind of perfect. That's why we're choosing this pond to show you guys. So let me show you what's going on. So Glenn's got the pond draining. It's kind of our first step. And I'm gonna take a second actually to go over some contractor stuff. So you guys see we've got these two ponds here. These are two collapsible tanks. They're collapsible fish tanks. So they bend in here and there, and you can collapse them up to almost nothing. So the reason we use these, number one, you can store them. We used to have these big plastic tubs, Rubbermaid type tubs, and they took up so much space. And number two, just the volume of these. I think, what are these, 500 gallons? 500 gallons a piece. So Glenn is using the water from the pond. We don't drain it and just get rid of it. Number one, you need somewhere to put your fish, right? So the first thing you have to concern yourself with, and I think we only got one left in this pond, it's kind of sad. And I don't need a tank this big, but I'm doing it for demonstration purposes. But we're gonna take all the pond water from there, which is good, healthy pond water. We actually, after the chemical imbalance, we actually drained the entire thing. We didn't flush it too much, and then we filled it back up. But it's been running for, I think, a month and a half now. And so this has got to have really good bacteria growing in it, and we don't want to waste that. So this tank is going to be filled up, and also the spot where we put our fish. So you'll notice, for you contractors out there, we've got a much more contractor heavy-duty aerator. This guy here is set up because if we're doing a pond where you got 30 fish, we can put all 30 fish in this tank, enough oxygen going for the entire day. We do some clean outs. Me and Glenn are veterans, so we're gonna have this thing done in 2 hours. Typically, this is a 4-hour event for Glenn at somebody's house, roughly. But when you're gonna be there for a day, maybe 2 days, depending on how big the pond clean out is, you need something that's gonna keep those fish alive, and that's this. Now, you might be asking, why do we have 2 tanks? This seems like kind of overkill for a 300 or 200 gallon pond. This is only gonna get filled up a third of the way with the water that's in there. What we're gonna do though, is we're gonna go ahead and turn this thing on. Hey Glenn, do you wanna go ahead and turn the hose on? We'll start filling up in here. Oh, I talked to the pressure washer, so we'll do it afterwards. Okay, so typically we're at a customer's house. The reason I have this, we're not gonna get to use it fully today, is we usually have a second tank that we're filling with the customer's hose water. And we fill that because we have a second pump. Now this is just an efficiency thing that we found over the years and stolen ideas from other CACs, certified aquascape contractors, where we can fill this with 500 gallons of water. We can then use that instead of the hose water to do our rinsing process. So for you contractors out there, if you want to try to make it a little more efficient, and actually it just even helps get it more clean, it's pretty impressive. So what you can do as a homeowner just takes longer. You gotta get the hose and so on. We're gonna show you that today. But this right here, having this volume of water, right? So that's a lot of water coming out. Rinsing these sections, it's a huge difference. So that's why we have the second tank, and we'll fill. So we might get to use that somewhat today. Also, when we're done, you can then use that same good water to fill the pond back up. And then if you have any extra you need to use, you can use this chlorinated we're going to be using city water out here today. So it's chlorinated just like you do at home, and we'll show you how you deal with that. So that's what these tanks are. Now let's go back and start talking about the actual pond itself. Huh?
You want to take a couple of questions?
Yeah, that's a good time actually. Let's go ahead and take a couple questions to start with. Do we have any live ones? Are you going to cut to Rhonda or Gara?
Rhonda.
Cool. Gara, cool. And we're testing this. I'm going to wonder if I'm going to hear it.
Hi, it's Gara from Earthworks. You've probably seen me on some of the videos. We've had 2 big projects completed by Earthworks so far. We've got a third maybe in the works next year. We'll see. We've got our fire pit put in, and we
Just say, we're going to do that question again.
Okay, yeah, so we'll just end up doing the question again. Sorry guys. You probably hear it at home. We're trying, this is fun actually. We're trying all this new technology.
Yeah, we're going to turn it up on here.
And I'm going to show you guys Samantha later today.
2 big projects completed by
Well,
Earthworks.
wait, we're going to start this
so
question
far.
again.
We've
It's
got a
just
third
delayed.
maybe
Yep.
in the works next year. We'll see. We've got our fire pit put in, and we.
All right.
Hi, it's Gara from Earthworks. You've probably seen me on some of the videos. We've had 2 big projects completed by Earthworks so far. We've got a third maybe in the works next year. We'll see. We've got our fire pit put in, and we've got our furniture out there. We've been using it all the time this winter, had a great time. And of course we had our beautiful landscaping done, and that's really added to our enjoyment of our backyard. And then of course our first project was in fact our pond. And we had our paver patio put in, as well as our awesome pond. Recently we added and put in a deck over quarantine that my husband and I built together. And then we of course had to add the hot tub to overlook the pond at night, which has also been used quite a lot this winter. And we just had our first pond clean out in the end of December, which took about 2 full days. We had a lot of debris, a lot of stuff going on. We upped all the chemicals right afterwards, and now we're starting to see some browning around the rocks. I'm really hoping this is all healthy bacteria growing and starting to recycle again, but I would love to get your opinion on it. 2 full days, we had a lot of debris, a lot of stuff going on. We upped all the chemicals right afterwards, and now we're starting to see some browning around the rocks. I'm really hoping this is all healthy bacteria
Fixing to go to you.
growing and starting to recycle again, but I would love to get your opinion on it.
Cool. So right off the bat, we're good? So yeah, right off the bat, I'm going to put the earpiece back in too, just in case you guys get that rolling. So, so what she's talking about, and it's actually kind of fun, I did a Facebook Live, Thursday, prepping for this event, and I was showing off our 11 by 16 pond. So Gara, I'm sure you watched that video, and what's really cool is what's happening is the ecosystem's coming back to life. So did she mention how many weeks it had been after that the brown started happening? So what'll happen a lot of times, right? So we're restarting, in a sense, the ecosystem. Now, number one, the rock, the filtration, it's all going to have ingrained bacteria, so it's always easier the second time when you're redoing it than the first time. So the first time we ever do a pond, it takes a lot longer for the ecosystem to balance out. But what's happening is it's on a very chemical, very microscopic level, but what's happening is you're seeing a lot of collection of some brown spots here and there, and that's the start of the natural ecosystem with the bacteria. So there are bacteria cultures that are happening throughout the rocks, and it's the starting point of your ecosystem actually kicking off and being ready to go. So it's actually a good thing, and that's actually happening right now with our 11 by 16 pond, the one that Michael put in a little over a month ago. That's just getting kicked off, and it's looking awesome. So when we see that as pond guys, we see these little squigglies and brown things on the rocks, we get excited because we know it's about to get really cool. So when you first build a pond or doing not really an old one, but when you're first starting a pond, you got to wait usually a good couple months before your aquatic plants really start thriving because there's no real hardcore nutrients in that pond. It takes a while for the nutrient levels to build up to be a good fertilizer for the rest of the plants. So I hope that helped, Gara. It's a natural, be happy, it's a good thing. All right, cool. So we'll cut to Glenn. Good?
So what I usually do to get started, take the skimmer apart and get the basket cleaned out there. Got a little bit of string algae in this pond that we're gonna remedy.
I got you. And hold on before you talk anymore because they won't be able to hear you. So Glenn's going to continue going over the skimmer and what we do steps 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay, so then we'll get in and get the filter pad out. There we go. Nice and dirty. And
Glenn's
disconnect-
trusty 5-gallon bucket's one of the best things too, by the way.
We'll disconnect the check valve here and then pull the pump straight out. And sometimes there'll be debris on the pump.
Yep. And now, Glenn, a lot of people that might be watching at home, they have ponds, but we didn't build them. So what Glenn will go over a lot of times, because we're assuming a lot of people that are watching this are mostly people that we built ponds for, or have an ecosystem or a water garden style pond like we do. And your pump is located in your skimmer, right? So a lot of homeowners down at their house don't even have a skimmer, Glenn. So just keep that in mind, right? So I know you're not maintaining a lot of those or servicing a ton of those, but you have some, right? Where the pump just sits at the bottom of the pond. Yep. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but keep going, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, you're just going to pull your pump out of the water and whatever, if you've got a filter on that of some kind, you're going to clean all that out. And so the process is the same, it's just maybe a little different setup. So.
Cool.
So anyway, we'll get the pump, and then when you get this taken apart, this is on our AquaSurge pumps. This will spin right off. It's just a secondary filter. But I always get my finger in there and feel for any debris. Sometimes you'll have leaves that get packed in there.
What's in that hole that you just reached into?
That is the impeller.
Okay.
That's what spins to make it go. So that'll be cleaned out, and then I'll take. This is really, really handy to have one of these. So.
How many fish you catch with that, Glenn?
You can catch all the fish with that if you really have to. I put big fish in there before, really. I mean, I put fish this long. But anyway.
He has much bigger nets. I'm just joking about that.
It's best for getting the debris out of the bottom of the pond without having to stick your hand down in there. And just on regular service that you do, sometimes you can't really see in there. It's a little scary is what's in the bottom. This kind of takes care of that, remedies that fear.
Cool. So as he keeps talking about that, I'm going to jump in. That's pretty much it for the skimmer. Now what he's going to do is he's cleaning that out, but eventually we're going to actually stick the pump in there as well and get that cleaned out. That's one of the dirtier places in the entire pond. What Glenn hasn't gone over yet is up here at the top. He's already taken this apart a little bit. It's gotten a head start as we were talking. This is one of our rock trays. At the very top here, eventually John might get a little shot at this, but this is our biofall, okay? So the biofall is where we have all the good filtration happening. This is where the bacteria culminates, and it starts and breeds. And so do you want to walk through that real quick too?
Yeah, now you'll see, usually there's going to be a bag of lava rock or bio balls in this case. These will get disgusting. And oftentimes people want to clean them. We don't really recommend cleaning these more than once a year or so.
And that's why we build rock trays. We make it as hard as we can. When we're building it for customers, we try to make it as hard as we can for them to try to service this, honestly, because you just need to service it once a year. And we try to repeat that so much because, watch, okay, that doesn't look disgusting because it's a black bag. To us in person it does, but on video it doesn't as much. But like these are supposed to be white filter pads, guys, right? They're supposed to look like more like that, but they're supposed to be white, right? And so when you see that being that disgusting, that's the actual color it's supposed to be, that white right there. You are gonna wanna clean those quite a bit. You have to fight that urge. So for all you OCDers out there, fight the urge, don't be cleaning, okay? You only do it when we're draining the entire pond and doing it at one time. Some people, Glenn, they don't clean their pond once a year like we recommend, right? They'll wait 3, 4, 5 years sometimes. And so when waiting that long, that can be really disgusting. So they should at least clean that once a year. If you don't do the pond clean out, at least clean that once a year. Because if that gets clogged, you're gonna have problems. I've never really run into a problem with those ever being clogged before. Have you? The biofalls? Skimmers all the time.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
But the skimmer, you need to pull that pump out of there at least quarterly.
Hey, is that a turtle? We got a turtle down there. We got a turtle down there. You guys see this? So he's hibernating probably. He's kind of, we didn't know we had one in here. This is really cool. Hey, little buddy. Look what we found. Look at that guy. So we didn't put him in here. He just found a nice home. It's a nice quiet spot. It's actually kind of funny. This is the one pond that's out in front of all the parking lot, but it gets probably the least amount of traffic. So he's a happy little dude. Look at him. Kevin's a big fan of turtles. All right, so I'm gonna find somewhere safe for him to hang out for now. I guess you know what, let's, so what Glenn's gonna do is he's gonna be pulling a lot of string algae out. So I think it's a good time, let's cut to maybe another question, John. So he's gonna be pulling string algae out, that's gonna be his main purpose. He's doing this before we get into start pressure washing and before we start rinsing and cleaning, because that string algae will get caught up in that pump pretty bad. Okay, so cut to another question. Let me get this turtle put away and I'll pop over.
Here's a question. I wish I could. I can't hear them.
So cut to another question.
So Jason, my fish seem a little stressed out, or I'm anticipating my fish being a little stressed out during the clean out while they're in a temporary location. What should I do about that?
They're seeing the question right now.
But we don't have it here.
Right, it's coming. So I'm just gonna do a shot
Cool.
of him.
So Jason, my fish seem a little stressed out, or I'm anticipating my fish being a little stressed out during the clean out while they're in a temporary location. What should I do about that?
So, that is a very good question. I'm gonna put this away for now so I can hear that. So, so we somewhat covered that a little bit ago. Have you already gotten the fish out? All right, so this is a good time to explain this, right? So we have one lone survivor koi in here. So I would actually cut in, and let's pull the pump out, because what Glenn's gonna have to do to get to this fish is he needs to, got it. Don't be pulling on your pump like I am right now, guys. We actually tie the cord off to the top of it, so you're not actually pulling it. For contractors out there, this is a simple thing that a lot of people don't think about. You pull it from here, it's gonna break. We put a knot in it, so you're pulling on the actual handle itself, not that actual entry point. All right, so he's grabbing his net. So what we typically do is it's a 2-for team, or he has to have a good setup. But down here in the very bottom is a built-in fish tunnel. And we have this thing cleaned out, maybe we can show you guys a little bit later, but it's where the fish can actually hide completely. So he's reaching in now. We make it hard, so it's even hard for us to get these guys out sometimes.
You got it overhead? She got your overhead.
She got the overhead? Cool, so she sees it from here. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying this. This is really cool. Like, feels like a studio out here. We got like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 5 different cameras, different angles. So I hope it's coming across really cool to you guys. So he's working on getting to both ends, but it's sometimes hard. Sometimes you have to get a hose stuck in there and flush it out. But it's just the one lone survivor. The idea with doing this and trying to be the safest on your fish, Rhonda, is to be as little intrusive to these guys as possible. So what we do is we do not, homeowners at home, you're gonna wanna go ahead and first try to catch your fish before you do anything. Don't do that. You're giving them an entire body of water to swim around in, which means it's gonna be harder for you to catch them, okay? You would think, oh, let's do that because you're not gonna stress them out. No, it's such a big body of water that it's so hard to catch them. You wanna drain that thing down to where it's almost nothing. Do we wanna drain it down further, Glenn?
I can't find it.
So he's like a red-orange guy.
I'm in there, but I got both hands looking.
Okay.
Going both ways.
All right, so we'll continue, but the idea is you want to drain this thing down to as little water as possible, because what it's going to do is most of our ponds are designed where they got a low spot, and it's going to make the fish want to come to that low spot. Now, just remember, even if the fish has got its top half of its body out of the water, it's just its gills that have to be surrounded. The idea is get as low as possible so you can transport him, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to take him and we're going to transport him into here. So this is what's going to keep him as safe as possible. So he's got a huge body of water here to hang out in, the aerator, which is putting more than enough oxygen in the pond, and that's going to keep him safe the entire day. It is the biggest concern you should have, is what are you going to do with your fish while they're out of the water? So a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, which he uses, it's our best friend in a pond clean out, is not what you really want to use when it comes to putting a fish in it. I've done it for my own home because I forgot a tank, but it's not the best. So you want to have something best prepared because these fish are going to stress out very, very much. So every little bit will stress them.
Oh, can we go to the maybe the Sean question, the brother? Sean's got a question for you that's related.
Cool.
So Jason, when a person has a fish about this big, how do you catch them? I mean, do you have a small net, big net? What do you catch them with?
Related.
Cool.
So Jason, when a person has a fish about this big, how do you catch them? I mean, do you have a small net, big net? What do you catch them with?
A fish that big. Okay, Sean. Yeah, exactly. I was expecting that from Sean. So a fish this big, we've never... Glenn, have you ever done a pond clean out that had a fish this big in it? Ever? Talking the most veteran, probably CAC in the world right now. Huh?
Yes, I have.
You have?
But it was a
What?
carp.
In Kansas?
Carp in this big pond, and I had to. We got him in the net, but came out. We couldn't get him, so actually I had to get in and bear
Bear hug him.
get him out of the water, and put him in, and that was a weird experience.
Yeah. So there's no perfect scenario, guys, on big fish. I've never had to get a fish this big out. Yeah, we've had fish that are, you know, a little over 2 feet long. And even those guys, we have big nets and we put them in the big nets. So sometimes it's just actually even somewhat safer to get them, grasp them, and put them inside. It's such a big undertaking. And so when you have ponds that have fish that big, those are typically the ones that we hope the customer will do as much as they can to properly maintain throughout the year, which requires less actual clean outs, okay? So yeah, so there's different methods with all of it, but a lot of times, yes, we're actually kind of somewhat manhandling them because sometimes those nets, they get in there and they're thrashing. They can pull scales off and all kinds of stuff, and we don't want that. You have to be very proactive to not have that happen because you do not, they're very open to and susceptible to all kinds of things, bacteria infections and all kinds of stuff. So whatever you do, you don't want them getting scratched up and pull apart. So in certain situations, it might just make sense to grasp them and pull them out. All right, so we've done such a good job that Glenn still hasn't found the fish. But what he's doing currently is he is actually getting a lot of the algae out. And then after we get the algae out, Glenn, you're gonna start pressure washing, right? Is that the key? Yep. So he's got the pressure washer hooked up. I'll show you guys real quick. He's gonna get this going. When he does, we're probably gonna, it's so stinking loud, you might see some of what he's doing to begin with, but it'll probably be a good time for us to also cut to a different scene, whatever you guys have in the background. It might even make more sense for me to even talk a little bit more about the ecology of the pond while he's doing that. But we'll see, it's so loud, we'll see on our microphones how well that works. So we have a $400 pressure washer. So for you contractors out there, you do not need to be the big, tough man where you have like a $3,000 pressure washer. You use those for cleaning your driveways, but for a pond, it does not require that much PSI and so on and so forth. And also, the greatest thing about these is they're so much lighter, right? So you can actually get these and hook them into a truck a lot easier. So Tim, our pond guy, or our paver guy, paver sealer, lighting specialist, he has a big honking one that he has to haul into his truck, and it's heavy. So this really makes your life easier, and you could even budget this in, replacing it once a year if you had to. What's up, Glenn?
Well, one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this, the water can be fairly clear as you look at, well, if I don't know if John can get a picture of this, but the water's pretty clear. But when you get to the very bottom, you want to pull that, and I grabbed this just in time before it started
Filling.
pumping in because
Because we're gonna take all the
dirty
disgusting water
I think
and mix
it's on
it.
It's on his shot in the background. It's all brown
Yeah,
water coming
brown water
out.
coming out.
So.
And that water's really good, actually. You saw how he aimed it right at the plants. So when you get to that part, guys, and if you don't want to reuse the water, if you want to start from scratch, don't waste it. Don't let it go down your driveway. Put it on the plants. It's such great nutrient-filled water that you want to use. All right, so Glenn's going to get that stuck in there, and we're going to start the pressure washing here in a second. Yeah, go for it.
Another question, Tim?
One other thing, Jason.
Hold on 1 second, guys.
Mentioned that when you're getting into the pond, the algae, these rocks are extremely slick.
Yes.
So you always want to be kind of watching.
So the better question is, I don't know if there's a question for this in the public, but Glenn, how many times have you slipped and fallen in a pond? Do you count them?
Well,
Is it so many that you can't even keep track anymore?
I did it one time in Buddy's pond, and I fell.
That
I almost hit my head on that fountain.
Yeah, that was not a fun one. That's a serious one.
But since then, I've not, knock on wood somewhere, but anyway, I've not fallen.
Yep. So you got to be careful, guys.
But I've had close calls.
Yeah, and what he's saying is these rocks can get very slippery. So when you're just jumping in, don't think you can just jump in and be just fine. So you want to make sure you're very careful. Now, for you guys out there that have the rubber liner, if you got just a straight up rubber liner pond, we don't do that here at Earthworks. We're always using rock inside of our ponds, and that's more of the ecology side, which I hope I get to talk about sometime today. You're not going to have rubber liner exposed in our ponds, but the rubber liner is the most slippery thing ever. And one of our best clients, longtime guy that he was mentioning, lives in Fernandina, has that. So he has like a rock edge around it, and then just liner that comes down, and it comes down a slope, and you have to if you don't use rock, and it just becomes this like slip and slide. So he went down hard that one time. It was not fun. All right, do we want to do another question?
Jason, how often should I clean out my pond?
All right, do we want to do another question?
Jason, how often should I clean out my pond?
How often? Another good question. Another great question. I'm realizing what you've done here, John. These are good questions. I need to keep asking for them because it's just going to lead the whole thing. You almost put them in a perfect order, didn't you? Wow. So, the question was, how often? Sorry. So the question is, how often do you have to clean out your pond? So on a smaller pond like this, I would recommend, it's not that hard, I'd recommend to do it once a year. All right. You can do it. Our recommendations are don't wait past 3 years. I have people that go beyond that. And just know also, if you call us and want to get a quote for a clean out, if you're not doing it yearly, those quotes are based off if you do it yearly. If not, there's a chance when Glenn gets out and notices like you've waited 5 years and we missed that for some reason and there's this much debris at the bottom of the pond, he might have to have a separate conversation and go, hey guys, like this is going to take me the rest of the day, you know, so forth. So we recommend doing it, but every pond's different, you know. So I have people that don't do pond cleanouts. These are the far and few in between. I'm using this as a very hard example, but the people that don't clean out their ponds, and I don't know if you want to just cut there and I'll talk to them over here, but I don't know, the people that don't clean out their ponds, they can have debris built up, and it takes Glenn way longer to clean those things out. And it's also not healthy for the pond. So we recommend once a year, maximum every 3 years. I did that at my house and noticed a huge difference on year number 4. I always test mine as a guinea pig. Year number 4 was a lot harder to maintain my pond at my personal home. And because I waited 3 years and I said, okay, that's gonna be my key. And that's what we found is the secret sauce is don't wait beyond 3 years. Now, it's gonna take you a lot harder.
Jason didn't do it, I did.
No, this is before you. I tested it even before you worked here.
Well, I'm the one that
Glenn cleans out my pond now.
Always.
And that's yearly, guys. That's yearly. Well, now that I've got Glenn, he cleans out my pond. You know, I do less throughout the year. So, all right. So, so yes, I would clean at least once a year. Ready to go? Yeah. I'm just answering this last question. So clean out at least once a year. Now, the other thing you guys want to do, and this really feels like we're torturing Glenn here.
One thing.
Yeah.
Related to that last question, that sometimes they'll say their pond looks pretty good, and the water's clear and there's not too much algae on it.
And this is a good example. This is my pond.
Yeah.
This is my pond. This is a good example. So Glenn's talking about like you'll be at home and you're like, I don't think my pond needs to get cleaned out this year. Like we send letters to all of our customers we've done clean outs for. We send letters directly to you guys. If you're not getting them, for some reason you're not on our list, but it has the exact price of what it would take to clean out your pond. If you're not getting that letter, or if you're at home thinking, pond looks good this year, I don't need to worry about it. Glenn's talking about
when I had this happen. We're right in our clean out season here now, so we've been doing clean outs every week. That's what I do almost every day. But one of the guys said, well, it really doesn't look that bad. And I said, well, it may not look that bad, but you just wait and see how much dirt comes out of that pond. The dirt settles. There's going to be sediment in the bottom of that thing. It's bad. And if you let it go and let it go, the sediment gets there's so much dirt in there that the pond can't handle it. It cannot. It can't flush it out. So, and then the water just gets really bad.
Yeah. So, and Glenn's talking literally about, he'll see some ponds, like this pond here will probably only have a little bit, and it's actually kind of bad because we're blowing off the parking lot constantly, but it'll have maybe an inch or two of sediment at the bottom, and it was cleaned out last year, right? So, but we've gone to ponds and we've stepped in, and this is the reason he has waders and boots, and he stepped into 18 inches of muck. And when we get into those are the ones that are really, really difficult. So you want to clean it once a year. But the other reason what I was going to talk about is it kind of feels like we're torturing Glenn because we make him do the clean outs in the winter, right? Make him. He loves it. He's just that guy. Steve Jobs should come see him and do a Dirty Jobs episode with this guy. So he loves it, but it's actually the best time ecology-wise for the ecosystem is to be doing it in the winter. So when you live, and if you're listening to this in Kansas City where he's from, you guys aren't able to do it right now because everything's frozen. Our springtime is when you're doing your cleanouts, but you need to do it in the winter. It's the best to do it in the winter. If you do it in the summer, we actually won't touch ponds in the summer. You have to sign a waiver saying that we're not responsible for your pond if you do business doing a cleanout. We can still service your pond, do all that stuff, but if you do a physical cleanout like we're doing here in June, July, August, September, you have to sign a waiver. It's too hot. We actually think it's very bad to do those cleanouts in that time of year. So we actually urge people, and we send out little discounts if you'll do it in the wintertime. And actually, his summers are the least busy. He's actually out helping the pond crew build ponds in the summer times because he has less to do. So you would think, why wouldn't we discount it then? It's just not good. Not good for the pond. So once a year, and do it ideally December, January, February are the best months.
All right.
Cool.
How many PSIs is that pressure washer?
Glenn, how much is your PSI on that? That's not 3,000, right?
On this?
Yeah.
I think it's about 3,000.
So it is a 3,000 PSI, 2.3 max gallons per minute. So it's actually that's pretty powerful, Glenn. You don't need that. Yeah, you do not need that.
Because you could damage your liner,
Yeah.
if you're spraying on liner, but I haven't ever had problems with this one.
So what Glenn was saying, just in case you guys didn't hear it, is we have to be careful with these. 3,000 PSI, actually, you still have to be very careful with. But you can actually get something more in the 15 to 2,000 range, and it's perfect for ponds because, and I'll talk about this more, but our goal is not to go ahead and blast every bit of algae off, although in our situation, we're getting paid, so we make this thing look pristine as possible. But that's not the purpose. That's not the purpose of getting all the algae out. Algae is actually a healthy part of the ecosystem. Too much is not good. Our big goal in this clean out today is getting all the muck and sediment out of the pond because that's actually what's creating your algae problem. So the 3,000 is great, but you got to be careful, especially if you don't have a pond like ours. You can go right through liner with a strong enough pressure washer. And trust me, we've only done it one time, learned our lesson, had to rebuild that pond for free. You weren't here with us, Glenn, at that time.
Johnny Ray did.
Yeah, Johnny Ray did it with Tim. Yep. And so you just learn our lessons. All right.
One other thing though, sometimes people don't have gravel or rock inside, and it's all liner, and you'll get this green algae that always grows all over that. Don't try to clean that off. That's
right at the surface too, right? It's usually really bad at the surface where the water meets the liner
because
it dries out, kills the algae, then it reforms.
But you don't want to try to get that off because that is, first of all, it's almost impossible. But you have to blast so hard on that liner to get it off.
And you put a hole in it.
Yeah.
Our rubber liner is really good. It'll last pretty much 30 years in something like this, probably even longer with ours. But in an exposed with sunlight hitting it, it dry rots a lot easier. And if you start just hammering on it or pulling on it, 15 years down the road, it's not a good thing. Trust me, you're rebuilding your whole pond. All right, so we're gonna do pressure washing, right? Do we want to try to answer a few more questions? Because the pressure washing is a key component to stay on track. Do we want to try pressure washing and see if I can still answer a couple questions?
Yep.
While it's going? Okay. The microphone, you guys let me know if it gets like too loud and annoying.
Our plants are looking a little rough. I would love to add new plants into our ponds this year. Wondering, based on the fact that we just had the clean out in December, when would be the most optimal time to do that? To add the plants or new fish into the pond?
Okay. So, how are we sounding sound quality wise? You want to check that? Pressure washer's kind of annoying, right? Sounding good? Decent. We'll work through it, guys. This is a pond cleanout seminar. All right. So, Gara was just asking when's the best time to add new plants and fish after a cleaned out. I'm going to expand upon that, Gara. So actually, it's also good just so you guys if you're getting a brand new pond. If you got a brand spanking new pond, you want to add fish and plants right away because that's what's going to help the whole ecosystem. You don't want to add everything right away. You're going to add 3 or 4 fish to the pond. We just finished up the Rutherfords this week, and I believe that they added their fish on Friday, the day we finished it. 3 fish, get that ecosystem going. Perfect. When you're doing a pond clean out, you already have fish. So most often you're taking the fish out, getting the ecosystem clean the pond out, and you're putting the fish back in. So those fish, you're going to go ahead and put those fish back in right away. They have to, because that's their home, right? And get the ecosystem going. At the end of the day, we're going to show you, we're going to put some chemicals in, some detox. That's the only major one we have to put in. We'll talk about some other things. But you can start adding fish pretty close after that. Your ecosystem is starting over in a sense, so I still say the same thing. Wait 3 weeks before you, so just put your old fish back in. Your plants are going to pull those out, cut them, reduce them. Those plants from the fish, the plants and the fish, you wait 3 weeks and start putting new stuff in. Plants you can put in anytime, but any additional fish, wait 3 weeks. So we got a couple questions here from Christy Musgrave. How much does a pond clean out cost? I have a 7,000 gallon pond with liner. Woo, that's a big pond. That's awesome. So like our big pond here at the nursery is only 3,500 gallons. All right, and then you also asked how many filters and pumps should you have in a pond? Okay, cool. Love the question. So, well actually what we do and what works out really perfect, I think it was Christy, right? Was it Christy? Yes, Christy. So Christy, we actually, the way we bid our ponds isn't necessarily on a 7,000 gallon pond. It's not by the gallons that the pond has. It has to do a lot with how your pond's set up, what it looks like, so on and so forth. So actually, you could actually even just attach a couple pictures of your pond, which people would probably love seeing the pond. So attach a couple pictures right here in the comments. And what we can do is, Timbo, he's one of our guys, we'll introduce him at the end of the entire event. He's got a little clip of who he is and how he kind of receives these. And Timbo takes those pictures and we look at that and we try to estimate what it's going to take to do your pond clean out. On a 7,000 gallon pond, I bet we're probably going to have to make a trip out to your home. So we probably make a trip out to your home, check it out, and see what it looks like and get a better assessment, because your 7,000 gallon pond, if it hasn't been touched for 10 years, it's going to be a way different price structure than if it was cleaned out last year. And on a 7,000 gallon pond, you may not be a candidate to clean out once a year. I'm sorry I can't answer it right here and now, but if you send those pictures, we might be able to answer it, but it's cool because now we have your information. We can hit you up on Facebook and we can try to do a Facebook talk.
Just picture in picture.
Huh?
Just showing you the picture in picture.
Picture of what? Oh, Clint. Cool. You're.
See both of them.
I couldn't hear you.
Just showing you both of them. You got picture in picture there, so.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, so now I get to see what it looks like. So yeah, no, I think it's a great question, Christy. But you have a very big pond, so that's awesome. We only build ponds that big once or twice a year, and nowadays they're actually being built as swim ponds. So we just got done with one you guys can check out. I think John's released it on YouTube. It's a swim pond we built for the director and head of social media for the zoo. They're married and built it at their home. It's awesome. So I think that one was Somebody was saying 15,000 gallons, and it could have been. It's more like yours, like 7,000 gallons. All right, cool. You want to keep doing questions, or? Cool. All right, let's do another question.
Am I going to see algae blooms after you clean my pond?
Am I good? Audio? Cool. So Mike Hughes asking about, am I going to have another algae bloom? So, great question, Mike. The reason we're doing this is so that you don't have another algae bloom, but it is totally potential that you can. So, the idea is, if you do this clean out right now and get all the sediment and muck out of the pond, you're going to have a much better successful spring. So, if you guys have ever had a pond at home, you know springtime can be the worst time for algae blooms. And there's a reason behind that, right? So can I go a little into the nitrogen cycle now? Yeah? I'm gonna go in the nitrogen cycle, that one slide. Can you guys bring that up? Yeah, it's the, yep. So hopefully you guys are seeing that. So the purpose of why you guys are having algae blooms, it all has to do with the nitrogen cycle, right? So if you guys can follow how this works, it's how every single pond works. I don't care if you build a koi pond or a water garden, right? And I haven't gotten to, I do a water gardening 101 talk all about this, and the differences between if you build a koi pond, which is not this is a water garden or an ecosystem pond, what we put fish into, which in my opinion is much stronger. It's a much better setup, but I distinguish that because koi ponds are typically just rubber bottom liners, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's just totally different ways of thinking of doing them. Rubber-based liner or a concrete swimming pool that have fish in it, but it's a more sterile environment. You have a bunch of outside the pond filters, and I think I missed you on that, Christy. I'll go back to that actually. So when you're building an ecosystem pond, you're working with nature, and you're working with that nitrogen cycle, which happens naturally and occurs in nature. So what happens is organic debris, fish poop, leaf debris, whatever falls in the pond. That eventually breaks down by bacteria, right? And it's going to break down into an ammonia first. Once it's done breaking into ammonia, there's different bacteria that attack that and break it into nitrites. After it gets in nitrite form, it's going to be broken down into nitrates. All right, so there's bacteria that focus on all of these things, and that's why when you come to our store, we might have a bunch of different bacteria. Well, they're all for different purposes. And if you understand the nitrogen cycle, you might understand what product you want to buy. So if you have lots of nitrates in the pond, that's what gets absorbed by a lot of your aquatic plants and so on and so forth. If it's in the nitrites or in nitrogen just in general, if there's too much in excess, algae starts forming. Algae is the absolute strongest, most versatile plant in the world, and it's going to grow anywhere. So if you have an excess amount of nutrients, which is the debris we're talking about, in the winter, everything's dormant. Your pond actually looks probably the best in the winter than it does all year long because everything's dormant. Growth is not happening, it's too cold. So when spring comes, all this debris at the bottom of your pond, right, is going to break down very quickly and turn into nitrogen, right? And if it's excess amounts of nitrogen, it gets absorbed by your plants. So the first thing that happens is it's absorbed by your plants. The plants grow, they flourish, they do all that stuff. But in the springtime, while you guys have a lull at home, right, is the water's still so cold that most of your marginal plants, your irises, cattails, they haven't started growing. And this is why plants are the most important thing in your pond. If you don't have plants, that's a main component of filtration. But your plants haven't started growing yet, and they're not ready to take that nutrient. But algae does not care. It will absorb it like crazy. So if the bacteria comes to life and starts eating that nutrients, it's going to go right into your algae. So if you've taken all of that gunk out of the bottom of that pond, there's now nothing left for it to have. All right. So that's the idea, concept. You don't get everything. So yes, you could have a tiny string algae bloom, especially if you do your clean out closer and closer to the summertime in spring. You're more likely and more likely and more likely to have algae blooms. In a new pond or an existing pond, you are likely to have algae blooms, but the severity is differed by how you treat it. And that'll go into how we do bacteria after the fact and so on and so forth. But this is the whole purpose. We're doing this because in the springtime, when you don't do your clean out, you guys ever notice that you have these fluctuations with these algae blooms. And it happens all year long. You have these algae blooms. Well, what it is the nitrogen cycle. Now I'm talking about more of a, we don't have a demonstration for this, but it's the curve. So as the nitrogen levels rise in a pond, your algae level is rising right behind it. But what happens is, your nitrogen rises, bacteria is right behind it. Bacteria only is growing in a pond in a situation where there's enough nutrients for it, just like any of us, just like in nature. So as the nitrogen levels rise, algae loves that stuff. Bacteria loves that stuff. So bacteria is going to grow and start eating it up and turning it into the proper nutrients. And as soon as it gets up high enough, the nitrogen level drops. Well, the bacteria level drops. And then it repeats that, and it's this big wave. And so you guys might notice, like, oh, I had an algae bloom, but it balanced out. 3 months later, I had an algae bloom. 6 weeks later, I had an algae bloom. And that's this wave. That comes into, you probably don't have the proper filtration system if you have this constant wave going on. There's multiple things it could be, but you want to have the proper filtration system. We're going to get into the dosing system. So I got a dosing system on this that basically is like a morphine drip that puts bacteria in every single day, slowly, and allows you to have a little less of a steep curve. You're having just a mild curve the whole way. So sorry for the long explanation, but it was a great question, Mike, and led into that. Because we get so many people that come in here that go, hey, I have algae problems, what do I do? Oh, I could just go, hey, here's an algicide, pour that in. And it will fix the problem, but a week, 2 weeks later, you're like, the algae came back. Well, it's because there's an underlying problem. Maybe you don't have enough plants. Maybe you have too much fish. Maybe you feed the fish too much. Maybe the filtration isn't good enough. And all these things come into factor, and that's where Rhonda during the weekdays, great person to come and ask. Matthew, my garden center manager, great person to ask. And Glenn on Saturdays. Bring pictures. You know, you bring the pictures and we can actually see what your pond looks like, how it's set up, ask you lots of follow-up questions, then we get to the bottom of the question, the bottom of the problem. But to go back to Christy was asking about filtration, and that's another one, Christy, how many filters and so on and so forth. When you get into that big of a pond, 7,000 gallons, that pond is so big that you need custom filtration, right? And if you want to talk about that more, we do free free consultations over the phone, half hour. So if you want to send pictures, you want to talk more about maybe how you can set your pond up better, you can basically talk to Lindy or Timbo, and they would set you up for a free half-hour consultation. You have to send a bunch of pictures in ahead of time, and we can do it by Zoom or just on the phone and talk about your pond, because that right there is going to need lots of custom stuff. There's no pre-done filter that you can put on a pond that big, in my personal opinion, that will be enough for that pond. You would need to daisy chain them, and that would get to be a maintenance nightmare. Go back and watch the John Brugan, the pond build we did, because we did a custom bog filter on that one. We have it's all aquascape products, but it's mainly done by nature. It's all by rocks and plants that are going to filter that pond. But we have some key components that make it happen. That's a whole other conversation.
Joyce wants to know if you went to pond school.
Who?
Joyce.
Did I go to pond school?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Joyce Hub. Did I go to pond school? Yes, I did go to pond school, but it's not the pond school. I don't even know what people would think of pond school, but yes. So I did not go to school. Okay, so here's my background. All right, it's kind of weird. I went to pond school, but not an official pond school. The only thing you could kind of relate to an official pond school, you guys ever follow Ed, the pond professor? Maybe you guys can put a link in there later to his Facebook page. Awesome resource. You guys all need to follow Ed. Ed is amazing. He is the geek when it comes to this. And he did go to school, and I forget his exact degree, but he's got a degree in the study of all things water. So it's like, you know, there's all these micro degrees you can get on understanding the ecology of how a lake works, a river, a wetland filter, well, a wetland system. He's got the overall study of all of it because he wanted to know how nature works in general. That would be the closest thing I would think that you would get as an actual degree in pond school. But what we did is there's something called the Aquascape Online Academy. They just started a whole new thing. But Aquascape, our manufacturer, they send out, we actually have to go through tests to get certified in that program as a certified pond builder with them. And they have, you have to go to Chicago, go through all kinds of rigorous stuff. This year they've been doing a lot of online things. So yes, there is a pond school, and actually anybody, a homeowner, you guys can do it from home. John Brugan, the guy we just did, I'm dropping his name a ton. John Brugan actually went through the whole academy as we were building his pond just to learn more about it. I'm not sure if it's free or not, but that right there is a certification in itself. And then there's levels and so on and so forth. But that's like the first thing you have to do of being a pond builder is that certification, go through the online academy. And I think it's 2 big phases and like six tests within each one. It would typically take somebody, I'd say 24 hours or so. They go through all kinds of PowerPoint things, demonstrations, and there's classes afterwards. After going through that, I mean, you know enough to do a lot with these ponds. And so anybody, the contractors out there thinking about getting into it, that's another first step. You got to do that. You have an off season, start cranking away at that. You're only worth what you know, especially if you're contractors out there. And we define it as, if we've built over 400 ponds, if you can do something for over 10,000, right? There's that whole saying out there. If you can do something for over 10,000 hours, you're finally an artisan. You're a master of that field. And so that's the starting point. Get the online academy and then just start grinding on these things. So yeah. How are you making out, Glenn? How are you making out? How much more pressure washing? You're pretty close?
A little bit more, yeah. One thing that I would show is that I'm not just pressure washing. When I get up here to these rocks, I'm stirring it up to stir that sediment.
Yep.
I don't know if John can get a
John, can you walk around over that Sylvestris and angle towards the waterfall? Let me show you something. So what Glenn's doing, right? So let me talk first before we crank that thing back up. He is trying his best. It's not just about pressure washing the rocks. And can you see in here, John, how much better this looks? Right? So he's pretty much done pressure washing inside the pond. And you'll see little bits of algae here and there. And it looks great. But the main purpose, go ahead, Glenn. What are you trying to do here with the stream?
When we have rocks like this, there is a huge amount of sediment that gets under those rocks. So what I do with the pressure washer is I'll blast it. Now these are, in here, this particular pond are larger rocks. They're nice because they stay put. If you have smaller ones, they'll spread out everywhere. They'll go crazy.
So what he's saying is,
you can see
our gravel that we use is 1 inch to 3 inch gravel, right? It's actually, some people won't even call it gravel because it's so big, but there's a purpose behind that. He's saying that this is much easier to clean the pond. If you got a bunch of pea gravel this size, oh my God, it doesn't get so compacted, all that, and it doesn't work. It's not good for the pond. So we use mainly bigger stuff. We've learned this over time, right? Bigger stuff. You can put some smaller decorative gravel here and there, but don't do it throughout the entire pond.
So if I do this, you'll see all the dirt if you get back a little bit.
Yep.
And maybe John can get a shot of this.
Are you guys seeing that muck? That muck just coming out? So what he's doing is he's loosening that muck up and basically just breaking that apart, because sometimes just taking a hose and rinsing that out is not enough. It won't come out. And that is what's going to create Mike Q. That's what's going to create your algae bloom if you don't get a lot of that stuff out. That is the main goal of why we're here today, is to get to that. But to get to that, you got to do all this work to get to it. And that's why, look at him. You're looking so pretty right now, Glenn. You look beautiful. That is clean. You only have one big algae patch on your head today. Only one.
Well, I'm gonna have to do a little more then.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do more.
But this is, the pressure washing is actually not the main step. The main step is after the
rinsing.
The flush. Then we'll flush and get as much of that, all that dirt out of there.
Yep.
And that's what's gonna. Then when we turn it on, the water's gonna be pretty quick.
Yeah. How much more pressure washing?
Just basically done.
Cool. All right, guys, we're almost done having to hear that loud, annoying pressure washer. All right. So, do we want to switch over? Is there anything you want to do? The pressure washing's almost done. Do you guys want to do any cut videos? Wasn't there something you wanted to kind of do a cut video of? Would this be a good time? As soon as. Okay, cool. We got a comment. We have water. Can I scroll up a little bit?
Yeah.
I want to see what Dave Sambuki. I like that name. Okay, we have a water feature at Cimarron with about 1,000 gallons of continuous flow. How often should the 10,000 gallons and 8,000 gallon power submersible pumps be cleaned? So you have Oh, Sambuca, that's why I like the name. That's our water feature. Okay, that's the Palmas waterfall we put in down in Cimarron. Okay, I'm with it. That's Dave. Yes, because this was
Dave Sambuca.
yeah, Sambuca. Remember? Yeah, we did the awesome. He's on
guy.
YouTube. Their water features on YouTube, right? Don't we have that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he has the 8,000 gallon per hour and 10,000. I understand the question. Sorry, Dave. So how often is that? Well, that's a great question. Okay. So Dave Sambuca has a great pumice waterfall that we put in. It's at the entrance of Cimarron. Any of you guys could drive by and see it from the main drag on 210. Wonderful, wonderful waterfall we did out there. I'm still amazed on Michael Q in that one. It was awesome. So, how often should you clean that? So, in a commercial setting like that, I'd still recommend you guys have us clean it once a year. Pumice waterfalls are actually a much easier process. That's a big one. Still a lot of pressure washing to be done. But the reason I would say on a pumice waterfall is you can go up to 3 years in doing that and run as a test, Dave. I mean, if you want to run it, you know, longer and try, awesome. But obviously, I would try to go ahead and have us come out once a year because it's also going to allow us the time to get in and do any preventative maintenance that would extend the life of those pumps. There's not much I have to do to extend the life of the waterfall. That's the greatest thing about us putting these things in. It's there, right? But I can try to help extend the life of that water, the pumps by cleaning them, getting in, getting the vault. But at the same time, we're gonna do the same thing we're doing here. We're gonna pressure wash everything, give it a nice new look. But on a pumice waterfall, just so you guys know, you can pretty much do that at any time of the year and not have the same issues as you do a pond. You're not worried about the fish, you're not worried about these spikes. And so you can do it about any time of the year. I still recommend doing it. I'd probably say early spring, Dave, because you're gonna have that algae bloom time. So I do it anywhere between now, late February. You can do all of February, but March is a great month. But you guys do have discounts if you sign up with us. December, January, February, there's a discount that we apply to all of our past customers. So once you've done one clean out with us, then you get the letters and there's a discount built in. So I would do it once a year. That's pretty much the answer. If you got a good maintenance guy, if you wanted to have somebody watch us do it the first time, we're more than open to that. I do it with contractors all the time. So if you guys want to see us build a pond, contractor out there, great. Well, if you have a customer, we'll build the pond at our price, and you guys can be with us the entire time. We're big educators. So great question though. And both those pumps should be lasting like 7 years is the goal, those pumps. They have a 3-year manufacturer warranty. I think, let's think, one of them might have a 2-year warranty, the other one 3-year warranty. But yeah, you're aiming for getting a 7-year lifespan out of those guys. So having us come out and check them is a great idea because you have quite a bit of tree debris there and such, and probably gets in there and can compact those pumps.
Our plants are looking a little rough. I would love to add new plants into our ponds
really cool,
this year. Wondering, based on the fact that we just had the clean out in December, when would be the most optimal time to do that? To add the plants or new fish into the pond? Our plants are looking a little rough. I would love to add new plants into our ponds this year. Wondering, based on the fact that we just had the clean out in December, when would be the most optimal time to do that? To add the plants or new fish into the pond?
Cool. I think this is a good time, John, if you want. I can probably ask Glenn, and he could actually rip out 1 or 2 of our plants and show you how we do those. Or actually, you know what? Let me just do it because he's in there busy cranking away at that. I don't want to slow this process down. So I'll probably do that. But let me answer the question first. So during the winter, yes, your plants are going to look the saddest. So you guys have, people love mostly the marginals, I'm sorry, the lilies. They love mostly the lilies. Everybody that gets a water garden wants to have a water lily. They always consider the water lily as the pinnacle of a flower or a plant in their pond. And water lilies are beautiful. They're not the most efficient when it comes to filtration side. That's where your marginals are. But the lilies, you have tropicals and hardies, and it's actually a great thing. On a small pond like this, you can only have one. But it's a great thing to go ahead and have like multiple difference, because the tropicals look amazing all summer long. But the hardy lilies, if you plant those right beginning of March, we start getting them in, they're the most amazing water lilies right in the beginning season. It's too cold for the tropicals. Tropicals start really flourishing when it's June. right? It takes a while for those things to really pop. And that's when the hardies start dwindling off. And then when the tropicals start dwindling, the hardies have one more burst before winter really comes. So different times of the year, different plants, Gara. But when it comes to your marginals around the pond, a great time is just throughout the whole season. So honestly, a lot of these plants look kind of drab right now. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna pull these plants out, we reduce them. So I'm gonna cut them back into smaller pieces. Once they've maxed out to their size, sometimes it requires taking them out, cutting them in half, replanting them to allow that new flourish of growth. And just like you would do in your garden, sometimes things get old, you give it a good haircut, and all of a sudden it flushes out. So in the water garden, we're not gonna use fertilizer and things because we're basing off the plants. I'm basing off the pond. And right now, the pond's not producing anything for them. So they're gonna stay like this. And if you bought a new plant, it's gonna stay like that probably until late March. Actually, probably even till mid-April in certain plants, because that water needs to get to a certain temperature for the plants to kind of wake up in a sense. So a good time to put new plants in is now, but you won't really get the benefits until April. You know what I mean? It's gonna take a little time. But I think it's a good time to cut. And let me show you some plants. Yeah, it's a good idea. John, do you mind coming back up the same area? So he's going to show you real quick. We're going to cut for a second. He's going to show you the disgustingness of the stream. There's just one little pocket right here, right? But you always start when doing the pond clean out, you start from the top down. So we start with the biofall, rinse that out, drain it out. Now we're starting here. And you can kind of see it's not super gross, but it is pretty gross just how cloudy it is. And that's all kinds of sediment, fish debris, leaf debris that's broken down. It's not just all, people think it's just all fish poop. It's not. I mean, you see how much tree debris we have above us, mulch can blow in, all that stuff is a factor. I can tell there's quite a bit of sand in here as well, which is probably from the parking lot getting blown off constantly. That's one thing about your home, it's nicer. You don't have a commercial setting like this where you're blowing the parking lot off and blowing everything into it. All right, so he's doing that. What I was gonna show you guys is how easy it is to kind of do marginals. So this is a star grass that we have here that looks awesome in the springtime. We keep it fully growing like this until March, and then we would usually give it a haircut. So what we typically do when we're doing pond cleanups in the winter, we still want to reduce it for you. We're in here, right? So these are pretty easy. They're growing inside the pond. So this is where we're taking it out. And a lot of times taking these out allows Glenn to have a little easier time. Oh, we got a built-in fabric. Yeah, see that. This whole thing's got fabric. Yeah. So we do that, right? And then you got all these like little offshoots. This is our time to get all this stuff out and just start a fresh piece. I could actually take that whole entire clump out, and I could just leave this and let it grow back in if I wanted to. I'm not going to. I'm just going to take all the smaller stuff out. We're going to get rid of that. This allows Glenn to hopefully get a little cleaner in here.
And around your plants, you will have a lot of dirt.
Oh, a lot of debris around the plants. All right, so it's made it even muckier. Your plants are a big collector of debris. That's just part of it. Now what I'm gonna do with this plant, you guys see how easy that was. These roots are just growing freeform in the pond. They're collecting that debris. That's what they do in nature, right? In these marsh and lagoon areas. The aquatics are the only thing that are filtering the water for us from all the toxins and things that we're putting in there. So the more that we can have in nature, the better. But very small root system. So literally, I can come in with my hands and just start peeling it apart, right? And I can decide on how much I want to put back in. Is that a good amount? I kind of like that, right? So I think that's good, and it'll allow it to double in size this entire season, okay? And now when we're planting plants, all you need is just for the roots to be touching the water. So we move the gravel out of the way. I don't want it to block. It's getting kind of fat. That's another thing. It was kind of blocking the waterfall. So I've made a little pocket here. This thing can set, and literally all I need to do, I could actually probably just set it there and it would grow in just fine. But we're gonna use some rocks just to kind of secure around it to let it give it a couple months to root in a little bit, right? And that's what you're gonna do. So throughout the pond, you're reducing it. So now I've taken all of this in that nitrogen cycle, if you guys remember, this is all nitrogen from last year. Put into this, into the growth. Energy has to go somewhere. So all of this is great now, but you wanna maintain it. You wanna go ahead and rip it apart, trim it. The more you do that, the more it forces the plant to grow. The more the plant grows, the more it's absorbing the nutrients in the water, and it's competing against algae. So the more successful plants you got going. So this is a great time, Gara, to go ahead and do all that you want to your existing plants. and reduce. So it's a great time to be doing that to your ugly ones that are kind of looking drab right now. Take them out, cut them, reduce them. That iris that's right here, John, I'm not gonna touch this guy. He's gonna stay right where he's at. I think he's just fine. That iris is doing just fine. I'm gonna leave it where it's at. And we might actually add some plants too here, Gara. I don't see, did you see a lily in here?
No.
No lily, so we don't have a lily in here. So we'll probably add a lily in here later on, right? It's actually a great time for homeowners to do it now. You got the pond emptied, you can kind of get to it a lot easier. So it's a great time to put a lily in now. Probably a hardy. We won't have too many tropicals this time of year. But yeah, and then you might ask, well, what am I gonna do with this? Well, I'm throwing it out. You might have a big enough pond where you can split it. Now this is another area you can plant another pond or plant another plant. Or do you have a friend? That stargrass has been amazing for you. You got a friend that has a pond? Well, give them as a gift. That'll be a great gift for them. Aquatics are like the easiest things to grow. And the cool thing is they're not growing into the ground, which you have to use a shovel to get out. Some of these guys are a little bit more bigger root systems. You might have to take a couple rocks out of the way to get to it. But it's a great time. And if you let this go 5-6 years, the plant can get so big it gets more difficult to do it later on in time. But the other ones I'm very happy with. So I hope that answered your question, Gara. And I hope it helped a lot of you guys out there. So plants as soon as you can.
Want me to go to the 2-minute?
No, maybe
So Jason, Earthworks sells pond liner, that's the 45 mil. It's the only pond liner that we sell. Can you talk about why that is?
Your question, Gara. And I hope it helped a lot of you guys out there. So plants as soon as you can.
So Jason, Earthworks sells pond liner, that's the 45 mil. It's the only pond liner that we sell. Can you talk about why that is?
you kind of did before.
You know what, Rhonda? Why so serious? She's like the most jovial person ever. She'll be so professional. I love it, Rhonda. All right, so liner. Yes, we only sell 45 mil liner. Technically, you could go ahead and get a 60 mil. We've never used it on a project ever. I know some contractors have had to use it in certain situations. 45 mil works great for every situation. I would never, ever go any less than 45. 35 mil that they sell at Home Depots and Lowe's, it works, but that stuff, you come back 5 years later and it's already tearing apart. It dry rots. It's just not the same quality. So 45 mil is referring to the thickness of the rubber membrane liner. And the stuff that we get, I think, is primarily coming from Firestone, the same company that makes your tires. They have a different whole process in the factory of how they do it, so it doesn't have the same chemicals. And also the roofing liners. So a lot of people have the roofing liners. It's the same product. So this is used in the pond because it creates that membrane. So we dig a big old hole and whatever shape you want, and this thing can contour and fit right to it. It's perfect. Now, Firestone gives their product a lifetime guarantee, which is awesome. Now, the reason why to have the 45 mil, but in order to do that, you have to have the underlayment. It is a fabric-y material that we put down first on top of the dirt and then put the liner on top of that. In a lot of situations, we're putting it on both the top and the bottom of the liner, but they only require it to be used underneath the liner, creating a buffer from any rocks and so on and so forth. Here in Florida, we got a lot easier. Up north, they've got much more chunkier soil, rocks, and so on and so forth. The only defect down here in Florida, and don't go skimping, is like when you get a palm tree. So this Perotis that's here is gonna be an amazing palm tree one day, but the root systems on that are gonna wanna try to compete with that water feature all the time. And that fabric is also a defender to your 45 mil liner. I have seen queen palms pop right through the liner before, so don't think that the rubber liner is the save all. You got to make sure you protect it, and that fabric is what's going to be there, the big difference.
Yep, let's do. I don't think I learned.
So Jason, normally when it's a new pond, we recommend that customers dose the pond for a couple weeks before introducing fish. But for a clean out, you're going to put the fish right back in the pond. If you're doing that, what do we need to keep in mind as far as water treatments for a clean out pond? So Jason, normally when it's a new pond, we recommend that customers dose the pond for a couple weeks before introducing fish. But for a clean out, you're going to put the fish right back in the pond. If you're doing that, what do we need to keep in mind as far as water treatments for a clean out pond?
Got you. And I might actually need to ask Rhonda this on the side later, but we actually do recommend you put fish in right away. So there is that kind of, and it's hard to remember, but there's that little disconnect. People, when we build our ponds, we want the fish to go in right away. I had to talk to the customers this week about it because there is that, shouldn't you wait a month before you put fish into a pond? And that is a yes and a no, right? So I keep forgetting, John, I'm supposed to talk to this camera. So that's a yes and a no. What are we draining, Glenn? Oh, okay. It's fine. Just making sure none of the cords are going to get wet. Glenn, can you redirect the water? You'll be fine. He's going to redirect it. All right, so question was about fish. So yes, we put the fish right in right away. You have to, obviously, in this situation. And we're going to use a product called Detox. Detox is a dechlorinating. It also helps remove metals and minerals, and it has a fish slime built into it that's going to help de-stress the fish, and it helps protect the fish when you put them back in. That's a product that we're going to be putting in the pond later today. As soon as we have it at least half full, we're going to go ahead and put some chemicals in, drip it in there, and be good to go. So that's going to protect the fish. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is when we're done building a pond, I actually recommend that you put at least 1, if not 3, beginner fish in the pond to seed the pond. Those fish are going to actually help seed it and start the natural bacteria cycle much sooner, okay? So it's very important that you actually do that and do it as soon as possible. Put the fish in because they start the ecosystem for you. You're putting artificial bacteria in. That's what we do for the first 3 weeks when we're done doing a clean out. For 3 weeks after that, you're putting bacteria in on a daily basis. And if you have a dosing system, which is this guy over here, John, you got a dosing system from us, right? If you bought it yourself or we installed it for you, it's a little tank that's in submersion here. This guy here is going to put bacteria in for you automatically. Takes care of it. You don't have to worry about it. It's thought-free. Just let it do its job. But if not, you grab a powder or a liquid form of either pond-starting bacteria, beneficial bacteria. Beneficial bacteria is always the one we recommend because it's multi-user. You can, if you don't use it for just that part, you can use it the rest of the season. A small bottle that's like $15 on a pond like this could last all year. It's crazy. But you have to remember it. That thing costs, I think, around $120, and then the chemicals you put in it are probably about $30. In a pond like this, you're going through 2 of those a year, so it's $60 plus the original investment, but it takes all the thought out for you. That continuing bacteria going in, if you refer back to my nitrogen cycle, it balances it all out.
So Jason,
Cool.
What's the difference between the beneficial bacteria that we normally sell and the cold water beneficial bacteria?
But it takes all the thought out for you. That continuing bacteria going in, we refer back to my nitrogen cycle, it balances it all out.
So Jason, what's the difference between the beneficial bacteria that we normally sell and the cold water beneficial bacteria?
Yep. So we're geeks here at Earthworks. And so if you guys are geeks at home, this is the reason we have all these different bacterias. Technically, every different types of bacteria has a different purpose, okay? So beneficial bacteria is something that it's a very even concoction that can be used all year long. Cold water bacteria, they've labeled it that, but doesn't just need to be used in cold water experiences, because we're here in Florida. How long is the water really that cold? Cold water bacteria is used mainly for situations where, so let me back it up a second. So there are 2 main different types of bacteria or versions of it. There's heterotrophic and there's lithotrope. So the heterotrophic type bacteria is the type that's going to eat all the organic debris. It's a type of bacteria that takes like the mulch and just decomposes it, right? It's the same kind that happens in your composting if you're a gardener at home, a veggie gardener, herbs. If you're composting some of your own material, the heterotrophic bacteria, if you're ever using a bacteria to help break it down quicker, most likely it's going to be heterotrophic. Lithotrope is the type that actually feeds off nitrogen, right? So it's not feeding on the organic debris as much as it is the nitrogen itself. And so it actually helps for events where you're having string algae blooms, right? So the cold water is lithotrope. Your beneficial bacteria is a combination of heterotrophic and lithotrope. So it's the safest one you can put in at all times. All bacteria is safe. Let me not put that out there. All bacteria is safe. Most all bacteria is safe. All of our products, you can accidentally dump the whole thing in. You've wasted money, but you've not harmed fish or anything like that. So your cold water bacteria is mainly for cold water purposes, because when it's cold out, you're not breaking down organic debris. So the heterotrophic is kind of useless. So if you're using beneficial bacteria, some of the bacteria is not as beneficial. So if you want to get very geeky about it, yes, the cold water is the best thing to use. And that's what Glenn was talking about. We don't want to confuse people here. We tell all of our customers just to use the beneficial bacteria. It's just easier. We don't confuse them. But if you really like getting into that stuff, we have the cold water bacteria for all you geeks out there, like ourselves, because I use cold water bacteria after a clean out and all winter long. And then when the season picks up, I switch to the beneficial bacteria. And then we even have stuff that's made called, it's more of like a sludge. They've changed the name of it so many times, but there's sludge products you see out there, Sludge Away. And it's all basically just straight heterotrophic. So it will basically take all that sludge at the bottom of your pond, if you're trying to not have to clean it out during the summer times, use that type of bacteria in the summers, and it helps break it down. But a byproduct is you're going to create algae problems, because you're creating so much nitrogen so quickly that it can't keep up. But that's where I say that algae is actually a good thing. It's actually helping filter your pond. It's just when it gets excessive, it looks ugly, and then it's more as a cosmetic type thing. So I hope that helped answer it. But like we always recommend to all of our customers, we don't want to confuse you guys. When you meet Glenn, he's always going to recommend beneficial bacteria. It's just easier. So, are you making out, Glenn? Looking good. So I think Glenn guys is done. He's done with the pressure washing. He's been done for a while, and now he's been rinsing. He's got the hose rinsing. He's done. Are you done up top with the stream?
Pretty much. I flush until the water starts to run clear.
Yep.
And just working my way around. Now, another thing that's nice is when you have it empty, you can put rocks back in. Sometimes rocks will fall. You can put them back in place.
These koi are always trying to actually, move stuff around. That's just their nature. They're like little animals in there, little cats and dogs messing with your house.
So you can secure your lights. Sometimes they'll be flopping down and hanging instead of shining where you want them to shine. It's a great time to check your lights, because if you've got lights down at the bottom of your pond and it's out, it's hard to fix that. So this is the time that that's why the lights are on here. We turn them on so we can see and make sure everything was.
Do you mind if I see the camera, John?
Oh, well, we got a delay. This one?
Yeah, that one, if you don't mind. I want to show them the light. I know you're attached, so I'm paying attention.
No, here.
So let me show you guys. We got some very raw footage going here, but what Glenn is talking about is it's much easier to get to that light fixture now, right, than it is to go ahead and try to do it while it's submerged in water. And it's actually that one, sorry. This one actually is right at the water surface, but he's got one down here that lights up this entire section so beautifully. And if that's not working, it's much easier to fix it while the pond's drained, even if one diode's out. So that's where Glenn, here you go, John. That's where Glenn is checking these things and getting back with the homeowner and saying, hey, it's not working. I might as well replace it now. It's going to cost you a lot more money for me to come out separately to do this, because it's going to take me longer, and it's a separate service call, so all that good stuff. Yeah, it's looking good, Glenn. Yep. Looks 10 times better already.
So we can see down at the bottom that water is running pretty clear.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you can get a close look at that, John, but that water quality down there is looking crystal clear, right? So look at that. And that's what we're looking for. And also down at the bottom, we don't have a bunch of sediment left over. So this pond's a good example of one. It might have looked ugly with all the algae growing on here, but it looks really good.
There's one more thing that I'll do. When you have a fish cave, your fish cave will be full of gunk.
Yeah, that's the defect of the fish caves.
So I'm going to run the hose through the cave and flush out some of that debris.
Should I show them the cave?
We should be done there.
Sorry, we keep bouncing back and forth. These guys are going on a roller coaster ride with us. All right, so Glenn, can I get in one more time? Sorry. All right. So, you see down here that you're getting, you mind turn that off for a quick second? Yeah, there you go. Thanks, John. All right, give us a second here, guys. Pump's off, perfect timing.
All right, so if you notice, look at that. See, it's a 6-inch round ADS pipe that's built in. And you don't notice it. Did you guys ever see it until I went all the way down there? We build rock on it and around it. The exit is over there. I won't be able to get the camera in that angle right now, but they can come in that way and out this way or vice versa. Look at that. Isn't that super cool? All right, so they got their nice little fish home down there.
Cool. Thanks, John. Give it back to you before I slip and fall and break it. All right, we're good. Plug it back in. All right, we'll cut back to Glenn here in a second because I think he wants to give some more comments on that. Oh, question? We'll do a question. Glenn, I'm going to come back to you and talk more. I'm going to do one more question real quick.
So Jason, what's the difference between the beneficial bacteria that we normally sell and the cold water beneficial bacteria? Jason, are you wearing those navy blue shorts with palm trees?
Yeah. No worries. We'll do a question. Glenn, I'm going to come back to you and talk more. We'll do one more question real quick. We put the wrong one on. Now we're good. Okay.
What's the difference between the beneficial bacteria that we normally sell and the
okay.
cold water
Yeah.
beneficial? Jason, are you wearing those navy blue shorts with...
Come on, Rhonda. Why do you have to post that picture, John? You still post that picture all the time. Those are like my favorite shorts, but they like give me a hard time. And now Rhonda won't stop giving me a hard time about, you see the truck back there with the tent on top of it? She calls it the G.I. Joe truck. Make your mind up, Rhonda.
No, I was serious. Here we go. I believe I don't think.
So Jason, Earthworks
surprised there
sells
aren't more
pond
things
liner.
going
That's
on.
the 45 mil. It's the only pond liner that we sell. Can you talk about why that is? So Jason, Earthworks sells pond liner. That's the 45 mil. It's the only pond liner that we
Yep,
sell.
we did that one. No worries.
Can you talk about why that is?
Hey, actually, while she's queuing another question, sorry about that one, guys, but how awesome is this, right? We're gonna give some props to Sam. I know that's the wrong one, Sam, and I know it bugs you, but who cares? This is awesome. Having these like things, John, this is primo.
We're gonna do Lena here.
So Jason, Earthworks sells pond liner.
The other question I had was, we recently put in a water softener. I know that water softeners change the chemistry of the water. Should we turn that water softener off before we actually put the water back in the pond, or leave the water softener on?
Having these like things, John, this is primo. So all they're seeing is the back of Sam's head so far.
The other question I had was, we recently put in a water softener. I know that water softeners change the chemistry of the water. Should we turn that water softener off before we actually put the water back in the pond, or leave the water softener on?
That's a great question, Gara. Honestly, that is an amazing question. So the water softener is really not good to be continually filling with. I would recommend. So actually, if you drain the water and use the water softener water to fill it up, no big deal. The problem comes in when you're topping it off constantly, right? So you'll lose an inch, 2 inches a week of water just from evaporation and splash and so on and so forth. And when you're topping that off, if you're the customer that likes to have it right at the fullest it can be at almost all times, and you're topping it off once a week, you're topping it off with that salt in the water. So how often you top it off can be bad because you're raising the salt levels pretty high. Now, in our fish tanks here at the nursery, we raise those to about a 3% factor just to kind of ward off stuff in the ponds, in the fish tanks, but in our ponds, we don't salt them at all. So you can though, but it's not necessary. So I would just recommend the hardest thing actually is getting fresh water in there throughout the year. If you fill it one time, not a big deal. You're going to start off and it'll have a little salt in it, and not a big deal whatsoever. But topping it off, the salt doesn't go anywhere. The water can evaporate, but the salt continues to stay. It's just like chlorine. We've had some pondless waterfalls in the past that we put autofills on. We don't put a lot of autofills on our ponds, and you can. We'll gladly do it for you. We recommend just filling it with a hose because then you have more control of knowing what's going on with your pond. Pondless waterfalls, I love putting autofills on because they're just easier. You can't see the reservoir. It's just easier to let it take care of itself. We've had a situation where one was leaking and the customer didn't realize it, and their water was so chlorinated that was because the water was leaking out, the chlorine was staying in it, and you should have seen the pump on this. It was like white. It was crazy. So same thing where the chemical, that product, that element is staying in the pond, even the water's draining out. Same thing with the salt. So be very careful with that. If you have water softeners at home, with the continuous filling of it. If you're going to use it, I recommend getting a cheap $20 on Amazon digital salt tester, just to make sure your salt doesn't get too high. And also, Gora, if your salt levels are high, that might be a reason why some of your plants could look a little rough. The first sign is not typically the fish. I think the first sign when you have too high of salt is going to be you start seeing some plants that just are doing okay, not great. Cool. Can I cut back to Glenn?
Yeah, you want to cut back?
Yeah.
Let's cut back to Glenn. All right, Glenn, did you want to finish your train of thought on that?
Where were we?
Just we got crystal clear water.
Yeah.
And literally, you're just picking out your...
Now, we were in the fish cave
Yep.
flushing that out, and I have an area over here that I'm flushing. And I just flush until the water comes clear, and that way when we turn it on, it's going to be clean. So otherwise, you will have a lot of sediment and so forth, and you take a day or two for your water to clear up.
Yep.
So that's kind of how I judge that. I'm a little bit OCD in this, I have to say.
No, not Glenn.
Clean is clean. So like I'm looking for little leaves and whatever.
Little pieces of
shows
mulch,
up here.
anything in the pond. He's right. He's absolutely right.
I want your pond to be clean as a whistle.
Yep. Anything can get out of there. And honestly, the algae on the rocks isn't as important. Cosmetically, people look at that, but him getting every little piece of leaf and debris out of there is actually what you want to pay him for, instead of having to pay him to pressure wash. But that's the technical side of it. But the beauty, obviously, just cosmetically, you want it to look good too. So we of course do that. So recap: we are currently we've started by first getting our tank set up to receive the water that's in here, and we can put our fish away. The second step, so the first step is draining it, of course, after getting that done. Once it's drained, we go through and we're picking out as much debris as possible, right, before you pressure wash, so that it doesn't end up in the pump, slowing things down. So that's the big thing. And then after Glenn's done pressure washing, now he's taking a hose from the house and just rinsing every nook and cranny down to that very bottom part. So when you build your pond, you should have a low spot right in the bottom of the pond. So he found the low spot in this pond, moved the gravel away. The pump is sitting right on top of the liner. This pump can suck water out till about this depth, about an inch or two. So you're rinsing everything down, and that's the process. That takes the longest, this process. So as he's rinsing, he's rebuilding little rock areas. If anything's moved, shifted, he's checking out lights. He's getting all the rest of the debris that he possibly can. While he's rinsing, he can stick a hose in this pocket, let it rinse out for a second while he's manipulating some plants. So it's a multitasking job while we're out here. And then once that's all done, that's when then we can then get out, let the pond start filling. And we're not too far away from that, so it's going pretty well. Timing wise, for all you guys on live, yeah, I don't think we're oh, holy, it's 11:45? Wow, time just flew this morning. All right. So yeah, I don't think we're too much further. So us saving that water is going to make it very quick to fill it back up. If not, you'd be out here for probably, let's say a good hour or two, letting it fill up. So another step for you contractors out there, do you want to sit around waiting for an hour or two, or do you want to get to the next customer and service them and be done with them? So that's why we have these tanks. It makes that process a little faster. It allows us to do it quicker for the client as well. Cool. Another question?
So Jason, when the pond is finished being cleaned out, it can look kind of muddy with a lot of debris in the water. How long does it take before that clears away?
It makes that process a little faster. It allows us to do it quicker for the client as well. Cool. Another question?
So Jason, when the pond is finished being cleaned out, it can look kind of muddy with a lot of debris in the water. How long does it take before that clears away?
So yes, great question, Rhonda. And actually, technically, when we build a pond, at a customer's house, when we build a pond, it stays more murky longer than after a pond clean out, typically. But Glenn, so I'm not answering this wrong. So I'm not answering this wrong. Typically a few days after you're done doing a clean out, it's crystal clear again?
Well, usually when I do it, it's, we'll put one of those fine filters in, and it'll be clear in a few hours.
Yeah, so we aim for the same day we're out here, you have crystal clear water. Some ponds that are bigger, that we're working on that just have so much debris and you only have a day to do as much work, you get as much out as you can, but our goal is to get everything out, right? So it should be pretty crystal clear afterwards, but there are certain ponds that just persist to be a little more difficult, and they can take a few days. So typically when we build a pond, it's usually 3 days to a week, because of all that sediment on the rocks and so on that has nothing to do with, it's not harmful, but it's so fine. But what Glenn does is he gets it as clean as possible. So we want this thing running as crystal clear right off the bat. But then he also puts in a Rapid Clear Fine Filter Pad, right? So we sell these at the nursery, and they're perfect. So there's 3 in a pack. I think they're like $15 for a pack of these or something like that. And this goes right inside the skimmer. I'm not gonna put it in now because I don't want to get it dirty, but it goes right in front of it because this is going to collect like an AC filter. Any little impurities are in the water, and it's going to help probably by this evening. If anybody were to come by today at 4 o'clock and look at it, it probably should be crystal clear. So that's the goal with that. John, check this out. All right, don't look in here yet. Don't look in here yet. We're going to do a little comparison. Look at this. Look at this tank. That's the water that was in there, right? So this is a good example of how crystal clear that was, and it's been agitated. You can see there's gunk at the bottom. That's good and agitated water that came in, so it's not completely crystal clear. But this is a fairly clean pond, not like we've seen a lot of them. Mine at my house, I'm completely guilty of it as well. It's much easier when Glenn's here weekly maintaining ponds that it looks good. But this is what the bottom of the pond, all the sediment ended up looking like. Do you see the difference? I don't know. Can you see my hand beyond that? No, you can't, can you? It's gone. Oh, there my hand is. So that's why we're out here, right? So I'm glad he captured some of that disgusting water. But that's all the stuff that we're trying to get out of the pond. But also in turn, that's great stuff. We won't just dump that in the parking lot. That's great stuff. When we're done, we'll use it to water around the plants. Great nutrients. All right, so how many more questions do we have left? Just so I know for timing purposes. About 3 more? All right, cool. So we'll run through those. Well, we got the 3, and then we're going to end this with Tim. Tim's going to be our end of the whole thing, right? Okay.
A little intermission, 2-minute intermission. Do that now?
You want to do that now? Yeah, let's do that now. Yeah, we'll do an intermission.
Hey, my name is Glenn. I'm the pond service tech here at Earthworks. I have been with the company for about 4 years. I came from Kansas City, where I had a business up there, and just got too cold. So I'm enjoying things down here in Florida. It's funny because before I got hired at Earthworks, they had a build-a-pond, and I went over I thought, man, I want to build a pond. So I went over there, checked it out, worked with Jason and Sean. We built this pond, and they figured out I knew what I was doing, so they hired me. So here I am. But I do all the clean outs and the maintenance, solve problems, find leaks and so forth. And we are heavy into our clean out season now, so I'm pretty much, I have the absolute dirtiest job in the country, hands down. And here's a little sample of what I get to see every day. It's lovely. This is beautiful stuff. But even though it's grungy, dirty work, my kick is to get the pond that I'm working with to look back to brand new. And that's when I can get that water going, we clean the algae off and it looks new, and the customer is just like, wow, I forgot how good this thing can look. So anyway, that's my sense of joy that I get from this job. We pressure wash the ponds. We address any issues that might be that we might come across, fix rocks, lights, check all that, but then we flush. That's one of the biggest parts of the clean out, is just to flush all the debris. And there are a lot of times I'll come up to a pond and they'll say, well, it really looks pretty good, you know, and it does. You don't see a whole lot. We get it drained and start flushing, and you start seeing this kind of stuff, and it's just like, holy cow, I had no idea this pond was that dirty. And so we get them bright and shiny, spanking clean, and back to that brand new state, and that's what you want to have. So.
How'd you guys like that video from Glenn? I told you, right? He should have a spot on the dirtiest jobs. And I don't know, I don't think you guys even get to really see some of the, I mean, you should literally see him. It was so funny. It wasn't Glenn, just recently we were doing a pond for some customers in Marsh Landing, and it was so funny. So the pump here at the joint, right down here, broke off while they were draining a pond. These customers bought this home recently, and it had a pond, and it's just been, you can tell, it was like a 12-year-old pond, and it looked like it hadn't been even cleaned out in 3 years. They had probably, there's one of those customers that had all this muck. They moved into it, and the customers before knew they were moving out, so I think it just got neglected. And it's so funny. So Mark Usina, which a lot of you guys have seen on Facebook, he's probably been on, has he been on today? Has he seen any of our stuff yet? Have you seen him on? So. No? So Mark Usina is one of our employees and one of our best fans on Facebook, obviously. And it snapped off, and it was in the middle of the disgusting bottom part, and it just went from leg to body to face all across. And it took all he could not just go walk to the truck, but it took all of about 30 seconds, and he was just like, what am I gonna do? And just laughed it off. It is so funny, because it's just disgusting, poopy, blech. But you know, you work with it long enough, you just start to love it. You know, the smell of that ammonia-y bacteria smell, you just grow to love it. All right, so that's Glenn. He's the guy you guys would see. Hey, that film you did, they just saw your short video. They cut to that, yeah. Yeah. All right, so at this point then, Glenn, are we looking good? Do we want to start filling it?
We're just about ready. I'm putting cleaning the filters up.
Yep.
And then we'll go ahead and pump this water back in. We'll have this filled up in 5 minutes.
So efficiently, he's just saying, so what we would do now is typically he's cleaned the filters. There's little intricacies that you could do that speed up your day. And one of the things you want to do is clean his filters. One of the things you want to do now, though, is I think, let's get this pond filling. But the cool thing with what we've got going, you would typically want to get your hose in there and start filling this darn thing to get it going. But with what he's got going is you can actually go ahead, we're going to stick that pump in there, and it's going to fill it up within like hopefully 5 or 10 minutes. All right, Glenn, can I stick the pump in?
Yeah, go ahead. So what we'll do is we'll make sure it pumps out this dirty water first.
Out of the hose. So there's still water in the hose, guys, and it's going to be dirty as can be. So we'll pump that into there. Once it starts clean, he'll swap it over to here. Where are you plugged in at? Over here?
That's kind of why I wanted to put that up in the...
Yeah, I see you.
So, yeah.
Let's find the end. There it is. So you guys see the hose, it's coming out nice and dirty. So you gotta be careful with this hose because you can actually agitate, that right there will agitate it even more. So he's gonna stick it in the skimmer, let it fill from here, fill in, and we're gonna drain that thing down all the way. You guys wanna do another question? Also just the fact that we're doing a disgusting pond clean out. Camera lens gets dirty. Yeah, we're making good timing.
Okay, so one of the problems that we noticed last year in the spring was our pond has a very deep section over here, and we have a lot of movement with the waterfall and a lot of water moving. But when we get over here, it's a lot more shallow of an area, and we started getting a lot more algae buildup on just this side of the pond compared to over here. One of the things that we had added was a jet underneath the bridge here to help move the water along, and we noticed that that helped with some of the algae on this end. Are there any other new products from Aquascape that could help us with algae growth or ways to improve our pond's function over the course of the year?
Now you're live.
So yeah, guys, there are going to be, all right, so what's interesting is when you build these water features, a lot of times you get these hurdles you have to go over. And with the Garas, it was actually an interesting one. We ran into a lot of pool equipment. So typically we'd have the pond be all at the same elevation for most of it, like in a situation like that, but all of our pool equipment ran through there. So there's a little area that was shallow on the other side of the pond, which actually made it really interesting, I think, and really cool. So the kids could actually get in very easily from that side and even kind of go underneath the bridge, and because their kids actually like to explore and play. They're actually in there with snorkels and having fun. So it's not just something to look at for them. It's a very interactive type thing, and keeps it awesome looking, or keeps it fun for the kids. So yes, Gara. So that area is kind of always going to be that problem. We realized that the reason we put the jet in, number one, is because it would help having more flow in some of those areas, just keeps stuff off the rocks and keeps it getting into the skimmer, and it filters it out. Makes your life a lot easier. Now, the idea of trying a new product or anything like that would help out, yes. I mean, number one, an ion gen is probably one of the best things for keeping string algae down in ponds. We love those things. We put those in so many situations. Actually, Glenn, can you come here? Glenn's like a huge advocate. I love the dosing system. He's not as big a fan of that. He loves the ion gen system. Like I love it from the chemical side, bacteria-wise, but he loves. Why don't you talk a little bit about the ion gen? Because I think you are still a huge proponent about it, and it kind of answers this question perfectly, I think.
Ion gen will work 100%. Period. You will not have string algae.
You're still gonna have string algae, well, long gob. You're still gonna have algae in the rocks.
Algae, yeah.
Yes.
The string algae.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not where they're two.
Video can be very confusing. You can say something and then people take it the wrong way. So I want to clarify that.
So it's the string algae that the ion gen works on. That's the only type of algae it works on. But it is 100%. And as long as it's working properly, the probes are not corroded, and your display is working properly, it'll get rid of your string algae.
And Glenn sees more ponds after they're built than anybody here in Jacksonville. And when he sees one with an ion gen, he knows his job's gonna be a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So ion gen's definitely one to go with. I can't remember honestly if we put. Does Gara have one on hers? Lean?
Yes. Yes.
She has an ion gen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so beyond that, and she's talking with her rocks. You guys didn't see it in the video. She's talking about that's on the rocks. I would always say you're going to have some form of algae growing. Now, if it gets long, hairy, that's a different story. That's where ion gen comes into play, and we might have put it on after the fact, but that's definitely helpful. That alone. And there's some things like I think people should try out. I think they're pretty cool. It works more in clarity, but they're like these little bombs that we sell. They look like Jello. If you go to the hospital, have Jello in the hospital. It's in that same kind of container, and it's this bacteria bomb that you can drop into a pond, and it's like just a one-time thing, boom, and it's great for parties and all kinds of stuff, and it just really uses clarity. Another product to try there. That's more of it won't be instant, but it'll be more of a long-term type thing. Yep.
And that's about it.
That's it for the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so look. Okay, so let's cut back over here, John. Look how full. If you get a look at that, look how full that water is. So he's drained out this right here. Fish is back inside the pond, and we're cranking. This is looking awesome. So all it is now is Glenn's gonna have to put everything back together. So he took out the filters for the skimmer, for the biofall, cleaned them, Glenn, you already got the biofilm put back together? Yeah. So take a look at this, John. You want to come cut through here? He's like a secret little pond ninja. All right. So he's already got the biofall put back together, filtration, and he put the rock tray back in. We still got to do a little better job decorating that so you don't see it. We don't want to see that plastic at all. The only plastic you see on these biofalls a lot of times, because this is a 1000, it's a 1000, you see this part, but when it's running, you never notice it. With the better, bigger contractor ones, you can reverse this inward and you will hardly see anything whatsoever. So it's actually fun seeing these where they're off versus on. Oh, and this is kind of cool. I didn't notice this earlier, but if you can get a little close up here, John. So this looks like it's not variegated water celery. It's maybe, I forget what it is, but it's a ground cover aquatic, and it got shredded by the pressure washer. You see that? And that's going to happen sometimes, but what's cool is this is all going to come back. And this right here just kind of grows across this entire stream portion, and it's a great little flower. It's like a little purple flower that comes up. It's awesome. All right, so I think he's pretty close. He's got this done. Water's back in full. I'm sure doing this live, we've kind of missed some steps here or there, and we're going to recap this, like I said, and it'll be a YouTube video afterwards. And we might, after we're done live, we might kind of think about it and shoot a couple more things. But I think overall, I think this is a good explanation of how a pond's supposed to be done. The fish is back in, so hopefully we'll see him coming out and surfacing here soon. But yeah, trying to think. What else, Glenn? What are we missing? That's it, right? We just got to cut the darn thing on. Huh? Just the waterfall. Just the end show, right? All right, so let's cut to that.
Let's see.
Trying my best. Trying my best to think of anything else. Is there any other comments, Samantha? Anybody else have any questions?
Somebody has an iogen system and it works great, and they replace the probes once over a 12-month period.
Yep. So, and a lot of you guys, if you guys, we've only had to put one of these on one pond ever. A lot of people might ask about UV lights. UV lights, I'm not a huge fan of. I don't think they're that useful in our systems. When you build a koi pond, they're very super useful. But don't get tricked by marketing out there that they kill algae. Like, they won't kill the algae we remove from that pond. They kill suspended particulate algae that's floating, that doesn't stick anywhere. That's the type of algae that it kills. And it's only got one purpose, and it's that. But the iogen by far is awesome. And if he's replacing it once a year, it's probably because they got a decent sized pond, and they've got it at a higher rate to keep that algae level down. Yep, I love the iogen. I personally don't even have one at my house. We have it on probably half the ponds out here because we're always running experiments. But the one at my house, I don't really have a lot of algae problems with. Glenn hates cleaning out my pond because I got all kinds of particulate at the end of the year. My nieces and nephews. One of my nephew, Preston, he's like a little engineer. He loves building his own little waterfalls. So on the back side of my waterfall, he'll in the mud, he'll carve out dirt and put rocks and gravel, and then start taking a pail out of the pond and washing it down. And then all of a sudden, there's just a bunch of mud that ends up in my pond. And it's really hard for me to say anything because he's having a great time. And I see a little future pond builder right there. So, but yeah, okay, so we missed it. He turned it back on, guys. So there we are. Everything's back up and running. And you can kind of see, I know the overhead view is getting it, but if you get a little closer, John, you can see all that bubble material. All those bubbles are just a chemical reaction. There's still some organics. And it's really cool. You see the skimmer in action, sucking all that up right here in the skimmer into that filter, right? So this is that, we're gonna keep this in here for about a week or so. But by tonight, you can see it's pretty clear, but with that hose coming in and filling it up so quickly, but 3 hours from now, you'll be able to see right to the bottom. It's gonna look stellar. Trying to think of anything else. Glenn disappeared, so he's probably helping a customer. That's Glenn. So I guess I don't get to say goodbye to Glenn. But I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I think we're a little all over the place.
I have a question. My king tut plant is in the marginal, has no green. Should it come back? Say the question.
It should. I'm not 100% familiar with that one. That's gonna be a Matt Barlow question, and I wish I could get him. Actually, you know what? You can probably get Matt Barlow just to get on the Facebook afterwards, right? Is that on Facebook?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Matt, let's get Matt Barlow. Before you leave today, John, get Matt Barlow, because I'm not sure the degree. Oh, perfect. Hey, Matt! Woo! We're gonna get a little garden center manager time here, guys. Oh, and bring the trolley train. Hey, can you answer this question for me? Can you come read this?
Can I do what?
Yeah, I'm not setting you up for anything, I promise. He thinks right now I'm setting him up for something. A comment, we're live. Can you read the comment and answer that question? I'm not sure about this plant. That one right there.
Amy Wilson, my King Tut plant in the marginal has no green. Should it come back? So the King Tut is the papyrus.
Oh.
It's a variety of papyrus. So Amy Wilson, your King Tut should come back.
For sure.
I believe I know what side of town she's on, I think. But yeah, they should come back. Even though they're not green at the moment, they should definitely come back.
Yep.
Depending on just how cold it got where you live, and I don't have it memorized.
Well, that might be my Amy Wilson we built upon this waterfall for too.
At the beach?
No, the one I'm thinking of lives like Loretto Road.
I was thinking another Amy. Yeah. So.
But the papyrus is going to come back regardless. I mean, we had some cold weather, but
we did.
I've never seen cold enough to kill papyrus, really.
They generally come back.
Yeah.
They generally will go dormant in the winter and then come back.
Yeah. So the idea is right in March, right? So if you're doing this clean out right now, March technically can be a little better time. You take that plant, if it's still fat, divide it, cut it back, put it back in, but it's going to take until April till you start seeing shoots come out of that guy.
And
has to be warm
we
enough.
have the, if you want to speed up that process, we have the Thrive fertilizer tabs. You guys can put a couple of those in your plants that go dormant. So most of our aquatics are going to go dormant naturally, and we get that question a lot.
Yep.
Like, oh my gosh, my plant's dead. No, they normally do that. I'd say like 90% of them just go dormant. So go ahead, right now, end of February, beginning of spring, you put those slow release tablets in there, and that'll speed up their comeback to become green again.
Yep. But I would not do that in an existing pond with all kinds of nutrients, because it's going to, springtime's going to have plenty of nutrients for it.
Yeah.
But if you just did a clean out, that's a great time.
Yeah.
And the Thrive, the only other reason we use it is for the water lilies. So your water lilies don't get enough phosphorus in the ponds naturally, so we put those in to help them flower as well. So the plant geeks.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Matt. The King Tut. I'll remember that forever now. The King Tut. That's a good one, Amy. Oh, no, Amy Wilson. The other Amy Wilson is in Pablo Bay. That's the one you're thinking of. Yeah. Pablo Bay. Yeah. Yep. And that's probably her. Yeah, she has an awesome pond. She actually had a pond we rebuilt because a pine tree fell in her yard on her pond. It was actually built by my mentor that taught me, in a sense, how to build ponds, or was my inspiration to build ponds, Joe Higginbotham, way back in the day. He built her first pond. All right, so I think that's a good wrap, guys. We're a little over time. But we got started late, so look at that. It worked out almost 2 hours. All right, so I think we're going to end this with Timbo, giving you guys a rundown on if you guys, and please, before we go into Timbo, if you have any more questions, keep hitting them up on this comment page. You better believe John, we all know John, Photo Video John, he's going to come hound me, and we're going to get answers for all you guys, whether it's an easy text, or if maybe there's enough things that I have to do a quick little Facebook Live, something random next week, I'll do that, but we will get back to you guys, and we'll try to remember your names, tag you in next week's post, so you know what's going on there. Actually, we can't, can we? On Facebook, can't even tag people anymore. Yeah, but maybe I'll do it personally. We'll do it that way, so we'll find a loophole. But just wanted to end it with thanks for staying with us, guys. I think this was a success. Actually, you know what? We haven't even, is Samantha even going to show her face? Is Samantha going to show her face? So this is the reason you guys are getting this awesome video play today. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Samantha here with Subculture. She's the one that came in with all the tech stuff and the production level.
This was so much fun.
This was a lot of fun. This was awesome. So if you guys ever have, and so anybody out there, CACs that are watching this video, definitely let us know if you want any information from her, because she can do some things remotely. She's working for some people doing a lot of podcasts. Those are very easy for her to do. Some guy in New Jersey and so on and so forth. So definitely hit her up. She came out today and is putting this on as a demonstration to us. This is freaking awesome. So yeah, so okay, let's end it. Let's get Timbo. You guys will see good old Timbo from Texas. And he's the guy that if you guys ever call in, he helps you guys when you have an irrigation problem, my outdoor lights aren't turning on. Basically, he's the guy back at the office making magic happen for all you guys at your homes. And he's the one that schedules good old Mr. Glenn there and has his schedule booked out. So any questions that you have, videos and so on and so forth, want a price, he's your man. All right, guys, have a great
Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed the virtual seminar with Jason with the clean outs this morning. If you have any questions or anything, you can call me. My number is 904-996-0712, extension 212. I can answer any questions, get you scheduled for any type of cleanouts or any services that you need for your ponds.